Well, Amy, thank you for joining us today.
It is warm and toasty, but it's nice to have it after a pretty wet winter.
Yes, for sure. So, most of your career has been marketing focused. You're currently a chief marketing officer. Can you talk a little bit about your background, what's brought you to this point in your career, and maybe a little bit of what energizes you about the marketing space?
Sure. I fell into marketing, and then fell into tech by mistake and have been here for a long time now. So I spent about 17 years at Microsoft doing just about everything you can do in marketing, which was a great learning ground. I tell people I got my MBA at Microsoft. And then I left and went and did different types of marketing and product management at Hewlett Packard before the split, and then was at Polycom and Plantronics, did a couple of startups and some verticals, and now am firmly in the hardware that feeds AI factories space.
That's great. So AI, what we want to talk about today, and how we see that correlating with people, where there's strengths, where there's weaknesses, people in the loop conversations. Let's start kind of there. As you think about marketing in general, where are you seeing some of the highest impact, and how much of it do you see displacing people versus augmenting them?
You know, it's a great question. I think right now a lot of people use AI as a excuse when they really want to cut heads for other reasons, and so they say AI is doing it. But AI is not prompting itself to solve problems. You still have to understand what the challenge is, what you're trying to accomplish, and be able to feed AI intelligently. And so, in most places, I think it is being used to augment people, and it's really about helping us move faster. And I know in my own team, we use AI every single day, and what it's doing is making us better. It's not making us redundant, at least not now.
And as you think about how you've applied it for your own business, where are you seeing it make the highest impact? Is it more around market research? Is it generating ad spend management? Like, where do you see the application having the most value?
Yeah, I think that there's three key areas of value for us right now. The first one is in writing basic things, right? You can automate meeting notes. You can automate or significantly amplify the speed with which you can craft copy or information. You know, it used to be if you were going to a big trade show, and I just spent last week at NVIDIA's GTC, it used to be we would create these long documents called Know Before You Go, and somebody would spend the better part of 20 hours pulling all that piece together. Well, now you can just say, AI, go look here. Now give me a know before you go with all the details people need to have. And voila, you've saved yourselves a ton of time. Now you still have to proofread it. You have to check it because it is true that AI can hallucinate. But that automating and making basic tasks like that faster is one key way. We're also seeing the ability to use AI to create synthetic, for lack of a better word, audiences. So we wanted to launch a campaign this spring. We're doing it on a shoestring as always. And we were able to create synthetic audiences using several different LLMs to kind of produce the audiences that would be seeing our campaign in the wild and to give us feedback. So, what was clear, what was not clear, what was not working. And in the past, if you wanted to do a focus group like that, that was both very expensive and very time consuming. And we were able to do this in half a day and get very actionable, useful feedback on what we could improve. And then I would say the third key area, and partly just because I like being able to say it, but vibe coding is real. When you can use an application like Lovable to prop up a website in a day, that's pretty amazing. And you can do it without having to be really fluent in HTML at all. You just have to understand what you're trying to accomplish and why, but you can feed your brand guidelines in. You can give it all kinds of rules and boundaries, and you get a well-coded site pretty quickly. The biggest challenge that often presents is that our big old corporate CMS are not necessarily ready for some of the vibe code. So sometimes there's a little translation in the process. But those are just three examples, and I could probably go on for a lot longer with others as well.
I really like that second one where you're operating on a shoestring budget and perhaps you're able to get a lot more input, not just in a short time frame, but just more input that you wouldn't have necessarily either had the time or budget to go collect otherwise. Is that kind of
That's
what you're seeing?
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And, I think one of the things that you have to remember now, if you've been in marketing for a while, you may remember when we used to build websites and do things like eye tracking studies to figure out what people looked at, and we would A/B test the colors of buttons to see what people would play with. And that's not all, um, immaterial anymore. But what's far more important if you're working on a website as a marketer is to understand how LLMs read websites. And they don't really care what color buttons are, and they don't use eye tracking to guide them on the page. And so you have to really think about what the what the result of anything you put out there is going to be and how it's going to be consumed. So if I'm a buyer, for example, and I'm wanting to decide which vendors to look at for infrastructure for my data center, odds are pretty good my shortlist is going to be compiled using AI, whether I intend to or not. Even a Google search is going to come back with some AI answers, and so you really have to think about things in a completely new way. And I find that incredibly exciting. It's a whole new frontier that we get to learn and play with, and I think it's just amazing.
Well, that's that whole space of answer engine optimization as opposed to SEO that's really developing now as a result of the AIs.
That's right, and it's different, and it's changing every day.
Now, where would you say your team maybe did you find up front there was some training necessary? Did you have some resistance amongst some of the team members as you moved AI as it sounds like pretty central to the business? What was your experience there as the people began to interact with the technology?
So I am incredibly fortunate to have a great team who are curious about tech in a big way. And they were so happy to be told, "Go use it," because I think there was a little bit of people kind of using it on the side and worrying a little bit that they were gonna get in trouble for using AI instead of, self-generating content. I'm like, "No, no, no, no. We gotta scale, we gotta run, go use it, find new ways to, develop tools, develop practices, and the only requirement is in our weekly meeting, you have to share with the team. What'd you learn? What'd you do? How did it help? What would you do different?"
That's always exciting. And so, as they're exploring these pieces, is there anyone who's started to look at like OpenClaw or agents of that sort as a member of the team, or how have you looked at that new technology, the agentic side of it?
We do have a bot that we've built, that, the team, decided to call Amy Bot. I don't take any pride of ownership. But AmyBot rewrites a lot of copy. We are in an international business, and we have a lot of people who contribute materials to the team who may not be native English speakers. And rather than using a third-party grammar tool, because it's really not about grammar so much, this is about tone and relevance. So we have trained the bot on both our own content, writers we really like, people who we think give it convincing. We've told it, like, don't start with passive clause, and so we're able to run a lot of copy through that. That's very effective. And now we're looking at what can we do more from an agentic point of view to help us with some of the super painful processes of handling leads, for example. That's our next frontier to go into.
Well, right now, as you again playing on the global stage, are there certain regions or even countries that you're finding it's more successful at supporting, or is it pretty consistent across the board?
I think it's pretty consistent across the board. The bulk of my team are focused on America's marketing. And so we are looking, generally speaking, first at US and Canada, but we're also seeing it to be very helpful in taking some of the things we've developed for our North American audience and then using the LLMs again as audiences to help us think about what would have to be tuned differently for to be appropriate in Central and South America.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that eye tracking and colored button colors, these types of things are still maybe not what the AI notices. Are there other areas you feel like the AI isn't quite able to truly replace these audiences yet, or is that the big part, the way humans interact with the visual?
I think AI is not good at necessarily understanding some of the tonality or um, nuances. So if you want to get facts, you know, are am I is my website answering the questions that a buyer is asking? Yes. Now, is my website accurately reflecting what they're most worried about? Now that may be a little bit you've got to spend more time training to get an agent to really give you that level of nuance. But, you know, I have to say the level of improvement that we're seeing in the LLMs literally day over day, you know, what I say today by the time this airs may no longer be true.
No, and I think that's one of the pieces we've been watching. It's just so chaotic and there's so much change. OpenClaw only came out maybe a couple months ago and already
Right.
NVIDIA has a secure sandbox version that you can license from them, and have up and live in a couple of command prompts, right? And have a small army of agents for pennies. So it's just amazing how fast it moves and evolves. Um, so along those lines, so you mentioned leads is sort of the next area for agentic that you're thinking about. As you're looking at the movement of marketing's responsibility that transitions into sales, actually executing on what you've given them, are you finding that team is equally hungry for these pieces? And are you finding the migration of that data is working well? Or are there some disconnects as because you said leads is the next step? Are there some pieces that you guys are working on how to plug into sales and help them succeed with what you're handing over?
Yeah, we've got a lot more work to do on that front. I would say in my current role at Delta, you know, sales and marketing have great relationships, so we're not in a
Okay.
fractious, you know, kind of a scenario, but we're also in a place where we have a lot of maturity to go to really be able to do this all super effectively. And a lot of that is our business is growing so quickly that we are trying to keep up with everything, even as we're trying to adopt the new and bring it forward. But across the company, I would say the support for and embrace of AI is pretty consistent, which is really nice.
That's great. And I think that's a piece of what, marketing usually, if you're not generating the leads, the marketing doesn't succeed, but it also doesn't have, on the sales side, if you're transitioning from sales to order to a customer, if something in there breaks because of an agent or AI, revenue stops coming in altogether.
That's
And,
right.
and at
That's
least
right.
marketing is a little lower risk conceptually.
Yeah, I don't think we're at a place right now where we want AI to be doing much more. Oh, I always hesitate to say this. I was gonna say, I don't think we want it to do much more than scoring leads, but that'll probably change pretty quickly too. But today, scoring leads is fine. I don't want it. I don't want to be using AI right now for following up on leads. I still think we're at a place where humans can do a better job of that.
And that's what we've seen a lot of clients go from, look, we just want to do things that are helpful but not directly impact revenue versus maybe things that are going to increase our throughput for revenue, but now risk revenue, right? Risk us being able to close orders and process customers and get products shipped. It's a lot riskier. And I think I'm hearing you say you agree. It probably makes a lot of sense. Focus on these things now that aren't going to necessarily interrupt business, but should
Right.
drive you new opportunities.
Yes. I think that we can speed up the time that it takes leads to one get in the funnel and get through the funnel, but closing is still at least in my business, is a people thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I know obviously there's a lot of work to make sure things stay secure in the environment. So I know personally I've been looking at attaching the AI to my email, and then I start to worry about confidential information. Is it going to bleed out? And so there's this piece where it's making sure it's not interrupting revenue and customers and shipping product, but also making sure you're not leaking your information. So as you've been using it just for marketing purposes, is that a big push to make sure there's clear guide rails and rules about what it can assess or touch?
Yes, we are very security conscious in a business where IP goes a long way.
Yeah.
So we have pretty clear guardrails about things that we just don't use AI for. And that too, I'm sure, will evolve as the technologies improve, as we understand where a sandbox exists versus where it doesn't. What can get out versus what can't. And I think that's another place where just looking at the last 3 years, the attitudes and approaches have changed dramatically. And we're seeing, I will give give Microsoft props for really making Copilot available internal. People can use it and not worry about it leaving, and that's made the team very happy as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Taking advantage of those secure components to your existing environment.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
can see that. As you think about in the end, marketing of the overall process, have you found that AI has just helped you maybe, like you said earlier, the audiences maybe you wouldn't have had, been able to maybe do some things you wouldn't have otherwise, increase throughput, or have you actually been doing new things? Has there been an expansion of maybe process steps as a result of having this available?
Yeah, the new stuff is some of the stuff that is most exciting. Being able to, I mean, some of these things seem like so dull, but you want to put a interactive feature on your website where people take a quiz and then you pop out an answer, and that used to take a lot of time. And we can do that in minutes now. So we can have interactive things in e-newsletters that we never could have before. We can do things that are fundamentally more interesting for people to engage with. And so it's a little bit ironic that we're using AI to drive more human interaction, but that is in fact what we're doing, and it's working really well.
Yeah, well, it's exciting. And I agree. It's the idea came in your head and you're able to execute on so many more ideas now than you would
Yes,
have just 2 years ago.
exactly. And the um it's also then easier to figure out very quickly what was not actually a good idea at all. Where before you would spend a long time building something that would turn out to be a bad idea. And now you can build it quickly, you can fail quickly, you can move on and do something that is more effective.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to see that iteration on ideas much faster. That's great.
Absolutely.
Is there any maybe area where you've been surprised with what AI has empowered you either in your job or amongst your team that you wouldn't have expected? Was there something that came out that you thought, wow, that was never on our plate, or we never realized that was possible because this now accelerates the team?
I had just in the last 2 days been playing with some tools that generate slide decks, and they're really good. And they're professional and they look great. And that was not possible just a short time ago. Slides were kind of this last frontier where AI could give you real slop. And being able to generate some of this content more quickly to help us be better communicators internally and externally, I was not expecting to see yet. And I've been very excited about that. I think it's also allowed us just to be a lot smarter about what the market is saying and doing. So it's not only social listening, we used to be able to do that. We had different measurements for that. But now we can apply AI to the social listening and it gets us, 10 clicks down in terms of our understanding and more importantly, what we should do about it. And that is pretty fantastic.
Absolutely. No, it has been so powerful in those ways. It's exciting. It's great. Well, Amy, that's what we had for today. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I think to the AI Luddites, um, just try it and play around with your prompts. And I think what happens very quickly is you find things that you didn't think it could do, or you get an aha moment and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to work that into my daily life. Um, and you will soon grow bored of the LLMs telling you what good ideas you have. So don't listen to that part because they say that to everybody.
Yes. Well, I love your point too about the PowerPoint slides, because in the business world, so much we fall back on that as a method of communication. And it used to
Yeah,
require a specialized skill or some person you knew in the cubes to go call to get them to make your deck look
right.
pretty. And now all of us are empowered to make that something available. And I think that's a really easy one. Folks could go try that out when they're resisting this and see how much it accelerates your communication and improves perception of the team for what you're delivering.
Absolutely.
Absolutely agree, Amy. Well, that
Right.
was a great conversation. Thank you for the time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bark. It's been a pleasure.